Welcome to the Build Wealth Canada podcast, where it's all about becoming debt-free, accelerating your wealth, and taking control of your money. Now, here's your host, Cornell Schreiber.
Hey, it's Cornell, and welcome to the Build Wealth Canada podcast. When we first start our do-it-yourself investing journey here in Canada, almost all of our focus is understandably on the accumulation phase. We are diligently saving, maximizing our TFSA and RRSP contributions, and figuring out the right asset allocation of low-cost index ETFs to grow our wealth. But what happens when you actually hit your number? What happens the day after you reach financial independence and you can finally quit your job to design the exact life you want? People often think that it is all pure bliss, but for many of us, a whole new wave of anxiety and challenges sets in. Suddenly, you are shifting from building your wealth to actually spending it. The fear of future stock market crashes becomes very real, and it can be surprisingly difficult to say no to extra work or some other extra income, or you might find yourself becoming overly frugal just in case something bad happens. In this episode, we are tackling this massive psychological and mathematical shift and learning how my guest Stephanie and her wife Jillian tackled this challenge after retiring in their 30s and 40s here in Canada to travel the world. We discuss exactly how they did it and how they manage their finances now to avoid running out of money while living off their portfolio. Here's a breakdown of what we tackle in this episode. Their decumulation blueprint, how Stephanie and Jillian structure their annual withdrawals so they can travel without the fear of running out of money. Protecting against market crashes. We discuss using cash cushions or fixed income, and if they use any specific rules for when to sell equities to refill their cash buckets. We also tackle lifestyle design and overcoming anxiety. We cover the psychological side of things. We explore how much is enough and how they master the management of everyday cash flows while in retirement and how you can actually find fulfillment once you no longer have a 9-to-5 job. In case you haven't heard of Stephanie and Jillian, they document their incredible early retirement journey and share practical financial lessons over on their website, ourfreedomyears.com. as well as on their popular YouTube channel, Our Freedom Years. They have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the realities of living off a portfolio as Canadians, and I'm thrilled to have Stephanie on the show. And now, let's get into the interview. All right, Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Hi, great. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate being here.
So, Stephanie, to kick things off, can you take us through your journey both before financial independence and then up to present day?
Sure. That is a lot of ground to cover. It started over a dozen years ago now. So we were, I think, a fairly average couple. My partner, Jillian, and I were recently married. We had a little condo in Toronto. We were mid-career. We had a car. We were doing vacations like maybe once, maybe twice a year. And we were feeling a little bit like we wanted something more. We were really interested in travel, and obviously just heading off once a year on a 2-week vacation wasn't fully satisfying us. And I had this notion that maybe my career could be the way that I got to see more of the world. And I spent some time researching all kinds of destinations. And out of nowhere, I came up with the idea of moving to Singapore and starting our careers over there. This was a completely novel idea. I had never even thought of Singapore before. But fortunately, I married a very adventurous person. So Jillian said, yes, let's give this a try. It actually was a little bit of work because it wasn't like we were both with companies that would move us over to this very far away destination. We were both with Canadian companies at the time. So what we did was spend a lot of time during the evenings and weekends reaching out to organizations within our various careers. So I was working in marketing and advertising, and we just started talking to people, trying to get a sense of the job market in Singapore. And after many months of this, and one very short trip to Singapore that we added on when we happened to be going to Tanzania to hike up Kilimanjaro, we thought, maybe we could stop off on Singapore on our way back. So we were able to do some in-person interviews, and we were able to both get jobs there, which was pretty amazing. And actually, I was a bit shocked that it worked out. So we ended up moving our lives over to Singapore, which is a place where we worked for over 6 years. And at first it was so exciting. And I always say to anyone who's interested in working overseas, that is an amazing place to be an expat. Because of course you have the whole region to discover. The country of Singapore is in itself fascinating and a really amazing place to be. But then of course you're traveling. Most people who are expats, if they're there in the first couple of years, you just go all over the region, checking out all the different countries. So it really fed that interest that we had in traveling. And we also got to dabble a little bit in, I would say, the expat lifestyle. So we were suddenly earning more than we had ever been before. We were paying such a small amount of tax because we had given up our Canadian residencies in order to benefit from Singapore's very low tax rate. So we had more disposable income. So a lot of expats, suddenly we found ourselves in the expat community, going to a lot of dinners and brunches and doing a lot of travel. So it was a very spendy lifestyle. So as things progressed, the excitement faded a little bit. And at the end of the day, we were working really tough jobs in corporate environments that really demanded a lot from us. Daytimes, evenings, weekends. It was a very serious career track. And eventually we both became a little bit burnt out. And I started asking Jillian, what else could we be doing? And she had a lot of answers for me because she had been ready for a long time to have maybe an alternative kind of life. And she presented me with this notion of financial independence, retire early. And at first I thought that sounded absolutely crazy because I always saw myself as very career focused. I just thought I would climb that ladder beyond 65. I was really focused on my career. But through reading some blogs of some other people who were equally career focused, but found their way to a different perspective, I became very interested in the concept of FIRE as well. So we really doubled down. And for our last couple of years in Singapore, that is all we worked towards. We had our jobs, but evenings, weekends, we were learning everything we could about FIRE, about how to be financially independent. We had a really great foundation already because we had always been savers and investors. So now we were just focusing our efforts on this one goal. And eventually we met our financial goals and we were able to wave goodbye to our careers, which was huge and shocking and wonderful. And we took off with our 2 dogs and we spent the next 4 years traveling the world as full-time nomads, which was really exciting. And we did that for, as I said, for 4 years until we reached a point where we were ready to mix things up yet again. And so now we have a little home base back in Canada, never a place I expected to essentially retire to. But after a decade overseas, I was ready to essentially come home. So here we are back in Canada. We have a home base here. We are pursuing our hobbies and interests, and we're also doing a lot of travel still. So we're certainly away over the winter months, doing a few months of slow travel with our dogs. And then we have additional trips over the course of the year. And that brings us pretty much up to date with our FIRE journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been checking out your blog and it's been really fun to see how things progress and how things change. And it's interesting, right? Because you envision things a certain way. And then it's funny how life happens and experiences change. And it's, actually, maybe we do want a home base. And I remember reading your blog post about that, how it's like, hey, there actually are some nice benefits to having that home base as well, right? So it's nice to try all these different lifestyles. And now that you're in FIRE, you're able to do that. So that's really neat. I can't remember if it was you or Jillian, but when I was reading your blog, you mentioned one of you basically got burnt out at one point. Like it was one of your partner's birthday. It was either you or Jillian's birthday. And then the boss called that evening and you were like, that's it. It's like, can't even celebrate a birthday without being bothered, having to work. Like, this is the final straw. Was that you that happened to, or was that Jillian? I can't remember.
It was very much me, yes.
Okay.
Yes, Jillian, we were both in a corporate environment, but mine was in a more crushing corporate environment.
Okay.
So she worked in healthcare and I worked in financial services.
Okay.
So I was in a very conservative, very driven, very competitive workplace. And your weekends were basically not your own. And so that was really what led me to finally say, hey, I need to do things differently. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up doing the same thing for the next 20 years.
Yeah. Yes, I was curious about that piece because you said you started off. I see similarities to myself in this, so this is very interesting to me. It's like in the beginning being very career focused, climbing the ladder. Let's see how high we can go, that kind of thing. And then you had that big switch where you're like, now we're gonna do FI, which is obviously less of a lavish lifestyle, right? Than
Yeah.
being like a VP at some major company, financial services company, or something like that, right? So what happened in your brain when was it that you kind of realized like, oh, if I keep down this career climbing path, then it's just basically going to be more of this working weekends, not being able to spend time with my loved ones. Was it kind of that where you're just like, I don't like where this path is heading?
Yeah, I looked ahead of me. I looked in the years ahead and I thought, is this all that it's ever going to be, just like this? And
Yeah.
I also looked at the people who were in the C-suite. So just above me in the workplace. Often we would be gathered in meetings with almost the entire C-suite there, the CEO, CMO, CFO, everybody. And they seemed like extremely unhappy people they never stopped working. And I just thought, is this what I've been focused so hard on, is becoming yet another person who isn't healthy, doesn't get to spend enough time with their family, makes so much money, but never really gets to enjoy it because they're too busy at the office. So I think that was really the breaking point for me.
So interesting. Because I had a similar thing as well, where especially when you get in these corporate environments, a lot of times, especially these bigger companies, you see sort of that path, right? Like the career path. Like first you're in this position, then if you do a good job, this is the next position, and then this position, and then So I remember looking at positions ahead of me and being like, I see how much hours they worked and how little time they got to spend with their families. And I'm just like, I don't want to be in that position. This is not like, I'm sure the money's great, but that's a pretty high price to pay, right? And then the health component as well comes into play. So that's really fascinating that, yeah, because you experienced that and I saw the same thing. I wonder if that's like a very common, to me, it sounds like a common thing that happens. People realize that's not the only path and that there are big trade-offs to the high salary as well. It's not free.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I
Yeah.
think, though, one of the things that makes a difference is understanding what else could possibly be out there, because I had felt burnt out for a really long time, but I never really appreciated what an alternative could look like. And
Yeah.
for me, it was finding blogs of people that were similarly career focused, but were finding new paths for their life. So that to have some inspiration, that was the thing that really made the difference.
Does it ever bother you, or did you ever think about, oh, what if I'd stayed in there and I could have been like some VP or president at this point and go into these super Michelin star restaurants all the time and taking the company jet somewhere? Because you strike me as a very ambitious person. And you mentioned like you used to work so hard at all this kind of stuff. Do you ever wonder like, oh, could I have met my potential by kind of staying in that path? How do you think about that piece? Because I find the ambitious people, I don't know about you, but like for me, it's always, oh, what if? You know what I mean? You sort of run these
Yeah.
scenarios in your brain. Have you ran into that as well?
I wasn't sure how I would feel after I left work and started traveling. But how I felt was that I just never looked back. I never once regretted it. I never wistfully thought of the career that I left behind because I was actually so focused on my new life, and my new life was so exciting. So for all the things that I gave up, going to conferences and fancy meals and having work trips to someplace exotic, actually, I got so much more in return. So certainly it was a more simple lifestyle than the one I would have had should I have stayed in Singapore and continued climbing the ladder. But it was one that I really appreciated so much more. And the travel that we did and the peak experiences that we had because of that travel, the places that I got to go, the hikes that we did, the sites that we visited, I never would have been able to do all that if I had still been working 90% of the year, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like there are trade-offs, but very much it's a worthwhile trade-off. 100%. I found the same thing. Like sometimes that my thoughts go there and then I'm like, okay, wait, but that doesn't come for free. That means you're spending less time with your kids, and when you're with them, you're probably thinking about some project or presentation you have the next day, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, like I wouldn't trade that ever as well. But it's interesting where it's so much about trade-offs, but the trade-offs are worth it. Yeah, it's very interesting to see the parallels just because we both kind of have different lives, obviously, but it's interesting the overlap between the two. I find that fascinating.
Yes.
Now, because there are so many unknown variables after hitting financial independence, especially when it comes to things like future stock market returns and unexpected major expenses, I find that it can be challenging to say no to career or business opportunities after hitting FI, or one can become just extra frugal just in case something bad happens. Have you found a way to be at peace when it comes to money and having enough, as opposed to getting anxious and maybe taking on extra work to earn just a little bit more, or maybe being extra frugal and saving more than you need to just in case?
Sure. And I think maybe to your question, there's sort of the practical element and then also the sort of emotional or philosophical element to it. So on a practical basis, I had been building my career in Singapore. So when I left that behind, so it wasn't that anyone was going to be inviting me back to Singapore to work somewhere else. And equally, I had been out of Canada for a very long time. So if I wanted to work in Canada again, the effort that would take to rebuild connections and a network and plug myself back into the workforce. So it never really occurred to me to do any of those things. We had gone through a very profound frugality journey while we were still in Singapore in our countdown to financial independence. So we went from very free spending. Sometimes I found it really shocking, actually. The brunches, ordering food in, going on a trip here for a weekend, there for a weekend, it all really added up. And at the time, we had no idea what it added up to because we didn't track a single penny. So when we shifted to financial independence, a frugality mindset, everything changed. And we just became people who were really happy and comfortable with a different sort of lifestyle. So for example, instead of rounding up all of our friends to go and eat dinner at the new expensive restaurant, we really valued bringing everyone over to our house and creating a meal for them. As we have now been financially independent for a while, we have just learned that we value experiences over things. There are a lot of things that we don't care to put our money towards. We're happy to have a used vehicle, very old model, versus running out and buying a new vehicle because we would rather take that money and put it towards incredible travel experiences. So it was just a real profound shift in our mindset. And we're really happy with where we are now. We feel like we're living very rich lives, even though we're not necessarily spending hugely on every little thing. We really make decisions based on what is it we value. Let's put our money towards that. And then we can leave the rest behind.
And now a quick message from one of our sponsors. We spent years and eventually decades optimizing our portfolios, maximizing our RRSPs and TFSAs, and fighting for every fee and tax deduction that we can find to help us reach financial independence faster. But we often overlook the one vulnerability that can jeopardize all that hard work in an instant: online security. I have been using TELUS Online Security to keep my and my family's data and devices safe at home and on the go, and now I can stress less about sketchy links, phishing emails, and hidden data breaches. My favorite part is that it is a comprehensive, all-in-one suite of tools. I used to juggle multiple companies for my online protection, whether it was antivirus, VPN, dark web, and credit monitoring, just to name a few, but I still wasn't sure if I actually had all my bases covered. These days, I just use TELUS Online Security. It covers all my bases in a single intuitive product, and it makes managing our online security so much easier. It's also much more cost-effective than dealing with multiple different companies that each tackle only a small portion of your online security. The plans start at just $12 per month, and you can see the plan that I use over at buildwealthcanada.ca/TELUS. That's buildwealthcanada.ca/TELUS. Do you ever still get anxious about money? Like when you see things in the news or you see the stock market tumble temporarily, that kind of thing. Do you ever experience money anxiety still? And if not, what have you found to be practices or ways of thinking that have helped you deal with that? Because there's so many unknowns, right? And so many variables and so much things out of our control. I don't know. I'm a natural worrier. That's just my default. So I don't know if you are as well. But I'm just curious if you ever get those thoughts creeping up, like, oh shoot, what if something happened and we don't have 2 full-time jobs to go back to? What now? Kind of thing. Does that ever creep into your brain? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I think part of that is having a lot of safeguards in place. So when we first left our career behind, we decided on a withdrawal rate that was very lean, I think, by our standards. So it was far less than a withdrawal, so a standard is 4%. We were way under 3%.
Okay.
So we took the first couple of years to really keep our spending quite lean and frugal, spending far below our means. But because we were so excited about our new lifestyle, we were happy. It didn't really matter to us. So because of those earlier frugal years, we were really able to let our portfolio grow. And now it's in a place where we feel pretty well buffered from the swings of the market. Part of that is just maintaining good financial practices. So we still track our spending every month. We have monthly updates where we look at our finances overall. And then we have what I like to call our financial summits every 2 months, where we just reassess our strategy, see if we need to move funds here or there, see if there's anything that we want to change or maintain. And sometimes these are very short discussions because there's really not that much to talk about. But sometimes we really decide to make some changes, and it's just a really good practice for us. And then the other part of it is we're not just invested in the stock market. So we have a portfolio that is for us a lot more balanced, where we do have our equities, and that is a significant portion, but an equally significant portion, we have what I would describe as high interest fixed income. So we invest quite heavily in a variety of mortgage funds. So that gives us a nice bit of buffer against the market swings as well.
I remember coming across that in your content about the mortgage products for your fixed income piece. If somebody wants to learn more about that, is there a resource you'd recommend or anything at all?
I wouldn't recommend a single resource. I would say probably go online and take a look at what types of funds exist out there. The ones that we invest in, you do need to be an accredited investor in order to participate in those. We have a few of them, actually. I think we were invested in 4 because we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. These do come with a certain level of risk. So, for example, some of our funds, sometimes if we're in a higher yield fund, it comes with a little bit of higher risk. So it's possible that they may go through some more challenging periods where we wouldn't necessarily get all the payments. So we have a nice diverse basket of these funds. So we're able to maintain a very steady inflow on a monthly basis. And that's been a really great foundation for us in terms of managing our spending and managing our finances overall.
Gotcha. If somebody wants to Google that, like the mortgage piece, what's the full sort of official name of the type of products that you buy for the fixed income piece?
Sure. It's a mortgage investment fund. And so there are a range of companies out there, CMI, Hosper, Foremost. Those are a few that I would recommend people look into. I would never specifically recommend any one fund because they do have some risks attached, but we have been investing this way for probably 15 years or so, and we have found it has been a very nice base for our overall portfolio.
Gotcha. Just because it's like a higher yielding. You chose that because, I just want to ask about it because a lot, like typically the standard thing you hear on a lot of FI podcasts and blogs is you just buy like a bond ETF that has lots of bonds, different durations, that kind of a thing, right? But I assume the reason you took this alternate path is probably, I assume, because the yields are simply higher. Assume, right?
Yes. Yeah. So a yield could be 7%, 8%. On the higher risk ones, you're looking at could be 9%. We have held individual mortgages that we don't hold individual mortgages now, but we have been part of holding an individual mortgage that has had some challenges or it has some higher risk attached and making, say, 11% on that. So these are some very good yields. So it provides a nice ballast to, say, the equity part of our portfolio, which obviously it goes up and down over time. And sometimes you get quite concerned with the news and how it's going to be impacted. And sometimes it's on a tear and doing really well.
Gotcha. I remember reading in one of your blog posts how, and I don't know if things have changed since you wrote that one, but the idea was that you made sure that fixed income that you would get from that, or the income that you would get from that fixed income portion of your portfolio was enough to actually pay for all your expenses, or maybe it was just essential expenses for the year. Is that still the case, or have you changed things along the way? What's the take on that right now?
Oh, yes. The fixed income portion of our investing absolutely pays for basically all of our expenses.
Okay. And that would be your discretionary expenses as well as non-discretionary, or just, or, because some people structure it's like, okay, we have the fixed income pay for the non-discretionary shelter and food, and then we'll have our equities pay for kind of the nice to have things if the equities are doing well.
Yeah.
How did you guys decide to do that piece?
Sure. It works out very logically for us. So the equities, it's very much a set it, forget it, and watch it grow over time. Take a very long perspective. We do get some small amount of dividends every few months. We are investing, we have Vanguard funds, which I think are very popular in the FIRE community. And then for our fixed income portion, it really feels like a paycheck. So we have different funds coming in on a monthly basis, and that really takes care of all of our day-to-day living expenses for the whole year. So I think our portfolio setup works out very nicely for us.
Okay. So do you find that present day, you're not really touching your equities at all, or do you actually touch them in certain circumstances?
No, we don't touch them at all.
Gotcha. You're letting them grow. That's for future.
Yes.
Yeah, because my follow-up was like, question was, when there's a stock market correction or something like that, how do you, because a lot of people, they'll do a bucketing strategy, right? Where they have got, let's say, a year of expenses set aside, or 2 years or 3 years. And then, when do you refill that bucket, right? When do you sell those equities to refill that fixed income piece to kind of help you weather some of those storms, at least psychologically? But it sounds like with you guys, so you're not really doing any sort of bucketing strategy per se. You just have enough allocated towards these higher yielding fixed income investments, which have like you can mention, more risk than like a traditional diversified bond fund, but then that actually pays for all your expenses, and then you're able to just let the equities ride, basically.
Exactly.
It does have in the future. Gotcha. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear different approaches to how you guys structured it. Yeah, so that kind of saves the whole bucket, because I'm always thinking about buckets and like, when do you refill? What's the rule? Are the markets high enough for me to refill now? And you get into these sort of, you try to come up with your own like investment policies and what works. It's interesting to hear how you guys did it. So with the safe withdrawal rate, so I'm trying to think, would that even really apply to you guys? Because you're not really withdrawing like 4% of your portfolio or less per se in like the traditional sense where you're selling off equities. You're just living off the fixed income. So it's a bit of a different kind of approach, it sounds like, yeah?
We always have the option with our fixed income where we could turn on the interest payments, or we could turn them off and let them accumulate. So we absolutely focus on what we want our withdrawal rate to be for the year. We have now adjusted it based on different circumstances over the different years. But essentially, we will look to turn on the interest payments to meet the amount that we need for the entire year. And then if some funds can accumulate, that's great. Or if we still need more income coming in, we can turn them back on to pay out.
Gotcha. Is there a certain withdrawal percentage that you have settled on now? You mentioned before it was like, I think you said under 3%, right?
Yeah.
Present day, now that you've had a lot more years of experience going through all this, living off your portfolio, what do you feel looking back now, and what do you actually feel comfortable with now as a withdrawal percentage from your portfolio as a percent?
Sure. That's a great question. What I would say is, when we started out, we had all of our assets as investable assets. And so we were withdrawing that under 3% amount. Now, at this point, a number of years later, we have taken some of our assets and we have put them into home ownership. So we have a small home in a small village in Ontario. So we don't include that. So out of our investable assets that are left, we are now withdrawing what is as a percentage a higher amount. So it's still under 4%, but it's much more than we used to, because we've moved some of the pot over to pay for the house.
That makes sense. Yeah, because before that, all that extra money had to go towards Airbnbs when you guys were nomads, essentially, right?
Exactly.
And now you actually have a base, you have equity in the house, that kind of a thing. It's really interesting, just to hear how things change over time, right? And as you learn more what you liked in your journey, what you didn't, and that's really cool. Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I know it's maybe went a little deep there, but it's fun to see how others have structured it and what they settled on. And then again, and it's not like you've been doing this for a year. Like, it's been many years now that you've been doing this. So it's nice to see what have you settled on after all this experience and all the tweaks. Where's the comfort zone for you and your wife? So that's really cool. Now, do you take your annual expenses? I'm just going to go through the questions I prepared, but I'll see if they overlap with what we just talked about because I wasn't expecting that answer. This is interesting. Do you take your annual expenses for the year out all at once at the beginning of the year? And what is your process in terms of taking money out of your portfolio to live off of? It sounds so to that. I think you've answered it already because you're just getting the interest from those mortgage investments, and then that's what you're using to pay for everything. Is that pretty much it, or is there something we should add to that?
That's basically it. So we do plan out our budget at the beginning of the year, and I have to say that our budget is the thing that really got us to where we are today because tracking all of our spending, being able to look back on it, analyze it, and then plan forward and say, okay, we can see that we'll spend more on this year, less on that. So at the beginning of every year, we look ahead, we look at what we had spent last year, what we think will change. So we do have a very clear picture of the budget that we want to allocate against all the different areas of our life, including travel, including utilities, including having a car, but also including meals out or groceries. Every little thing we've accounted for. So while we don't need to pull out all the money and have that there for the year because we are getting regular monthly payments from our investments, we still like to know well in advance what we think we're going to be spending that year.
That's really smart. I like how you have I guess it sounds like a meeting to decide, okay, what are we going to change? I assume so that it's aligned with what you both value as opposed to just let things go wild or whatever.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're like, oh, shoot, our expenses went up and we don't even value these things. And because I remember seeing that in a lot of your blog and your videos, how you've identified your values and priorities. And so you make sure you're actually consciously spending towards those as opposed to just going rogue and just, oh, we'll see whatever happens. That doesn't seem like your approach at all. So that's great. Very neat. So even to this day, you still track all your expenses. I assume you're categorizing each one, that kind of a thing, eh? I think you mentioned at one point you were using, one of your blog posts I read, I think you mentioned you were using YNAB. Are you still using that now or?
Yes, very much still using You Need a Budget. And it's just a very simple, easy way. I have looked at all kinds of budgeting apps and tools, but this is the one that I feel really comfortable with. And it just gives us a good view into what we're spending each month. And then because I've got all this data for all of these years now of spending, we can really drill in and understand and predict what we would be spending in the future. So it's been really amazing. If you like numbers and you like spreadsheets, this kind of expense tracking can be a lot of fun.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I think that probably feeds into the whole not being anxious about money thing because you don't have this giant unknown of, oh, how much am I going to need next month? You already know because you have these years of history and you know roughly what it's going to be. At least for myself, I find when I don't track expenses, I get more anxious. When I do track them, it takes the load off immensely. So it sounds like that's worked really well for you guys. So that's nice to see that it sounds like a best practice.
Absolutely.
Both operationally, but also from an anxiety, mental health perspective as well. With YNAB, so I used to use YNAB for a few years. And the reason right now I've migrated to my own Google Sheet. And the reason for it was because I was having trouble with having them automatically import transactions from my different institutions. And so it became this hassle for me where I have to re-authenticate every time. And sometimes the service is down or something went wrong. And I'm just like, oh, maybe I should just download the CSV file myself, plug it into my own spreadsheet, and then I don't have to worry about it. Do you guys import your transactions from your institutions using YNAB, or do you manually enter them, or how do you do it?
We actually enter them manually. So just is a little ritual. Every couple days, we get caught up on what did we spend here? What did we spend there? We find that it puts us really in touch with our spending and it allows us to maintain some vigilance in terms of, are we spending on what we value, or was this just frittering away some money? So I think this is one of the big takeaways from going through the whole FIRE journey and it's hard for people to shake this habit of being not necessarily frugal, but certainly very value focused and very much focused on not necessarily the pennies, but certainly the nickels and dimes of our spending.
Yeah. So do you guys meet like weekly, let's say, and you both enter all your transactions in for that week? Or what's the process that works well for you in terms of entering everything in and then reviewing it? And What's your process there?
Well, it's just a very casual thing. We usually try to keep track of our own spending, but sometimes it's slipped over a couple days, so we do a little bit of a catch up. And it's just something we might do over coffee, but it's very casual. The more formal thing is the monthly update that we do, where we sort of tally what we spent for the month. It goes in the big spreadsheet that we keep. And then we also, at the same time, update where all of our investments are sitting so we can have the full financial picture. And that is something that I always really look forward to because it really reminds me of what it took to get to our freedom and why we should be so grateful for it.
That's right. That sounds great. So even something like a coffee, if you just go and spend a couple bucks on a coffee, like even things to that level of detail, you will still add as well?
Yeah. I don't know how long we will continue to do that, but you know what? At this point, we still enjoy doing it and we get a lot of insight because of it. But yeah,
Gotcha.
even a coffee.
Yeah. I'm not criticizing at all. In fact, the way you do it is the most common way that from other people that I've thought, like I've been doing these interviews for over a decade, and the way that you do it, it no longer surprises me because more often than not, this is the people that really have their stuff together financially. They actually will say they still do it this way because, like you said, it makes you conscious about the spending. You don't have to worry about import issues. You get to kind of reflect, do I actually want to be entering this transaction all the time? Or is this something I don't even value? But you said maybe you won't do it forever. But is that in terms of little minor items like a coffee? But do you think you'll forever be doing the more major items like mortgage and utilities and things of that nature?
I'm joking when I say maybe we won't do it forever. It's quite possible we will do it for a very long time.
Sounds good. Yeah. And now a quick message from one of our sponsors.
It's the small things that make us Canadian. At BMO ETFs, all of our tickers start with Z. That's right, Z, not Z. From ZSP to ZEB, we know how to build solutions for the Canadian investor. So the next time you invest in ETFs, consider a Z instead. Visit BMOETFs.com for more.
There are so many opinions on how to invest your money today, but it can be hard to find credible voices to rely on in the world of finance and investing. One resource I turn to every week is the ETF Market Insights YouTube channel, led by today's episode sponsor, BMO ETFs. Market Insights brings in industry experts, and their weekly episodes cover the hottest themes like inflation, infrastructure, healthcare, and more. Tuning in helps me stay up to date on what's happening so I can be a smarter investor. And you can also submit your own ETF questions to be answered on the show. So do yourself a favor and subscribe on YouTube to ETF Market Insights or visit etfmarketinsights.com so you can be notified when future episodes go live. And now back to the show. So you know what on this subject, I know this is a bit of a nuance or going too much into the weeds, but since you're so into this, I want to ask you about the grocery spending piece, because that's one that I kind of struggle with a little bit from a budgeting perspective, because I'm thinking, okay, on the one end, the groceries are an essential thing. I'm not including going out to restaurants there, so we're already paying a lot less than if we were going out to eat a lot. But then we value the higher quality food and make sure the kids are well nourished. And I'm a big health nut. So for me, it's like I'll spend what we need to spend. This is a very important value-based kind of item for me. And so for that reason, it's like we don't really have a budget for groceries. But I wonder, should we? Because if we have one, then maybe now are we kind of more held accountable for the spending, more conscious about when we're spending it, like eliminating maybe some more food waste, that kind. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that piece? Because the grocery one, I struggle with in particular.
Hey, you know what? You've hit on a good topic for me because I love food. And that was one of the main themes while we were traveling is I wanted to try great restaurants wherever we went. And I still love going to great restaurants. And we also love cooking at home. It's one of our major hobbies together. And we also love using great ingredients that cost a bit more. So it's because it is a value, it's something that we're happy to spend well on. At the same time, by logging our expenses, we're able to be a bit more mindful about how much we are spending. And if we feel like, oh, maybe that was a little lavish, so we can bear that in mind for the next month. But because it's an item that's really important to us. So we don't mind putting a bit more weight behind it in our overall monthly budget and then maybe spending less in another area that doesn't matter so much.
Okay. So in your case, you would still have a number where like this is actually our limit for groceries this week, but realizing that you might exceed it. But if you do, then you're going to have a conversation about it. Is that kind of how it works? Or
I
no?
will happily exceed my grocery budget,
Yeah.
but the money has to come from somewhere. So maybe we'll
Uh-huh.
shift it. And often I do have a budget for entertainment, but often the food itself is the entertainment. Maybe we're inviting people over for dinner. Maybe we're going out for a meal. We will shift money from paid entertainment and put it towards food because that's
Okay.
something that's really important for us. Never want to cap the food spend, but I do want to be aware of what it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I've been trying to think of how to manage it because like I would never tell my kid, no, you cannot have this healthy thing because we've reached our budget. That's not gonna happen, obviously, right? Like you want to eat this healthy thing? Yes, I will gladly pay for it, right? But I'm wondering, like, is there some line where you're like, okay, we should still manage it instead of just spend whatever? Because right now it's spend whatever we need to spend. Obviously, you don't have food waste, but like this is such a priority that I will gladly exceed. Like even if you set a budget, like and it gets exceeded, I'm like, was it on junk food or was it actually buying healthy food? And if it's healthy food, then it's like fine, spend what you will. But I'm wondering, should there still be some like conversation about it at least? You know what I mean? That kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always great to track something if it leads to a good conversation. And you don't need to make the tracking the purpose. It's actually just understanding what your habits are and if that's where you want to spend your money.
Yeah, that sounds like a healthy approach. Yes, especially if you're living with a partner, right? And it's like you're not the only one spending that money, and they need to eat also. How do you get aligned on that kind of stuff, right? Okay, that sounds good. Thanks. That's one that I haven't deciphered yet, like the best kind of fit for us. And you seem to really have things optimized and figured out in terms of process of managing your expenses and all that. So this is great. Now that you've hit FI, what activities and/or projects have you found to give you the most happiness and fulfillment?
That is a great question, and it has really changed a lot over the past number of years. So when we first fired, it was really about the travel, and that was a full-time occupation between actually being in new locations and touring about, but also planning for the next one. Took up so much time. We were also creating a lot of content because we were having this incredible life experience and we wanted to share it with other people. So creating content turned out to be equally another sort of big part-time job. So those were all things that were very consuming for the first 4 years. But part of the reason that we wanted to have a home and have a base and be a bit more connected to a community is because we wanted to shift our focus a little bit. So now we have different interests that we're able to pursue. Jillian absolutely loves gardening. So that was something that we wanted to make sure that she would have is a home with a garden that she could really work in. I really love working with animals. It's something that I'm very passionate about. Jillian does as well. So I have been doing a lot of fostering actually kittens, which are super cute, for the local humane society whenever we're in town, so over the summer, for example. And of course, Jillian is absolutely helping out with that as well. We both have volunteer jobs that we're quite focused on. So for myself, I work in a fundraising capacity with an animal rescue. So this is an international dog rescue. It's basically all volunteers. It's work that I can do remotely. So even when I'm traveling over the winter, I'm able to support the rescue and get some great fundraising programs out. After I had done that for, I think, a couple years, I had mentioned to Jillian, I think you might enjoy doing this kind of work as well. So she also has a volunteer role with the same organization. Hers is quite different. She focuses on counseling people who are fostering the rescue dogs that we bring in, whether the dogs are from Mexico or from Canada's north or maybe Costa Rica. These are dogs with all kinds of different circumstances in their background, and they are put into foster care before being adopted out. So Jillian helps those dogs on their journey by counseling the fosters and interviewing them, and then interviewing the people that they get adopted out to. So we both have these what we find very exciting part-time volunteer roles. And so that's something that we are really passionate about and we're able to pursue because we have the time of being people who don't work for a living.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of these things are mentioned, or all of these things are mentioning, it's not like some for-profit, oh, how can we supplement our income so that we can spend more and travel more, that kind of a thing. How do you think about the whole generating extra income piece? Because on the one end, you could say, oh, you guys have a successful YouTube channel, you have a successful blog, you could be selling courses or doing like speaking gigs, or there's all these financial type things that you could be doing to generate more income. And yet you've settled on, okay, you know what? Our values is like in your case with the animals, with Julian with the gardening and the animals as well. You're basically, it sounds like you're like, no, we know what, we've earned enough, we have enough. Now we're going to do these things where we can really help contribute in a philanthropic type of way. How do you think about that, especially like your past ambitious self where it's like all about climbing the ladder and making good money and that kind of a thing. And now it seems like that voice is quieted down and you're like, you know what? No, I don't need more. I have enough. Now I'm going to enjoy life and work on in a volunteer capacity. Can you tell me more about kind of how you got to that point? How did you quiet that voice?
No, that's a great question because I think it was a little bit of a challenge when we first started traveling because we had stepped away. In fact, Jillian worked the very day up until we were flying out that night, leaving Singapore. So we were really fresh from the office, fresh from the meetings, the emails, the calls, all of that. So it was a big change to suddenly be traveling. And I think it was really helpful for us to be going through a phase where we were creating a lot of content because it helped us create a community of other people who were interested in the same thing. So we got to feel a little bit more connected with people as we were traveling. But the idea of sort of packaging it all up, I did experiment. I had a little course that I did. It was actually a little free course. I had a little product to help people budget for their own travels. But in the end, because our portfolio was actually very comfortable and we didn't need to generate more money and we didn't need to focus our attention on that, we realized that for the quality of life that we wanted, we could actually just focus on the things that were of interest to us and we didn't need to monetize our hobbies. So that was the key thing. But it took a couple of years to realize. I know a lot of people who are traveling full time and sharing their content. And I think it's wonderful to compensate them when an opportunity comes up for the great work and the great thinking that they're putting out there. But we don't need to be those people because we do feel comfortable. And also because the way that we want to contribute is actually through service. So volunteering. But it's a very individual journey and it took us a little while to get there. And we ultimately felt most comfortable with focusing on volunteering once we were settled in a community and we could maybe put down some roots. It was a lot more difficult when we were traveling full time.
So in terms of your journey, was it that in terms of figuring all this out and just being, okay, we have enough, was it that first it sounds like you identified your values and what you want your lifestyle to be, and then you knew exactly what it costs because you have been doing all this budgeting and expense tracking and all that. And you know what you could sustainably withdraw from your portfolio as well based on your investments. And then it sounds like, okay, step one, identify what are ideal lifestyle costs. Step two, do we have enough? Yes, we do. Okay, and so now it doesn't make sense to try to earn more by doing all this extra work and more stress and all that because we already have enough based on the lifestyle that we chose we want based on our values. Did I summarize that or package it up correctly, or would you tweak it out in some way? Okay.
Yeah, I think you did. It was very much a journey for us. And there have been many points at which we said, should we do something like buy an apartment in some city and rent it out as an Airbnb? And that would be a little business. But ultimately, we will always make the most money through our investments and not through some little hustling that we might do for ourselves. So we just had to ask ourselves, is this where we want to put our energy? Is this the best place for it? And for us, we didn't want to be running an Airbnb or starting a small business, although I have so much respect for people who do want to spend their time doing that. For us, it was really more about pursuing our hobbies and our interests and also contributing to the community that we are now building around us.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's really helpful. It sounds like you guys are at peace and you're happy and you've reached that point of enough and you're okay with it, right? And That's really nice because it's so easy for people to fall into the trap. Yeah, I'm sure being in the FI community, you've heard about the whole 1 year more syndrome, right? Where people are like, okay, I'll work for one more year. You know what I mean? Even though they hit FI, and then the 1 year never. It's always one more year, right? And then before they know it,
Yes.
like they have some health scare or something, and things. You know what I mean? And so it's a very important thing, I think, to be conscious of. Because yeah, it's hard to be fully happy and present when you're always like, oh, it's not enough. I need more. I need more. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Upon hitting your FI number and quitting your job, when one person does that, they get into this fortunate position where you can really design your life based on your values and your wants. Do you feel that you're in a good spot now when it comes to lifestyle design? And if so, what helped you figure this out?
We had to do a lot of experimenting to figure it out. So we did the traveling. We were spending time in Canada probably every 3 or 4 months to spend time with family. We were on the road for the rest of the time. We have tried living in different kinds of locations. We've tried living in different kinds of homes, a farmhouse in Colombia, a beautiful apartment in Italy. We've done all kinds of things. So I think through the experimentation, we figured out what is a lifestyle that works for us. So what we have landed on is what we have right now, where we have what we call our home base, because we are here, but we're not always here every month of the year. We've got a few months of slow travel through the winter. We have a couple other trips during the year. We are both really interested in hiking, so we try to focus our other trips on big adventures where we can go off and do an epic hike in some beautiful location of the world. We both have our volunteer work. As I mentioned, Jillian has her garden, which she takes very seriously. So that is the balance that we found. And I think we really enjoy where we are right now. Will we have it like this for a very long time? It's difficult to say because we always talk about what other options might be. Do we need a place somewhere else in the world that we return to year after year in the winter, for example? Right now, the answer is no, because we still want to be off exploring new locations. But in 5 years from now, maybe we would like to have a second base where we rotate through the two. So it's always going to be some experimentation, and we're fine to try something and then change it up the next time. So we just try to be very open-minded about what direction our life might take us in.
And just, yeah, it sounds like running a lot of little experiments which lead to self-discovery for both you and Jillian, and then discussing it and figuring out what we like, what we want more of, what we want less of. And that sounds like a really good approach because it's hard to, like, you can theorize about things all you want, what you like, what you don't like, but then it's like you actually have to try them because sometimes it's not what you expect, right? And your guys, like, I imagine when you guys first started off, FI, your intention was, I assume, to just be nomads forever, pretty much, right?
Yes. And in fact, we received that question a lot. And people would ask us, do you plan to settle down? Will you ever go back to Canada? And we always said, no, we're not going to settle down. We want to travel as long as we possibly can. No, we don't expect to ever go back to Canada because we spend most of our lives there and we want to see the rest of the world. In fact, we have settled down and we are in Canada. So you never know where it's going to take you. We never expected to be back here, but after 10 years overseas, we really felt that we wanted to be back where our families are and also just the Canadian culture that we missed while we were on the road all those years.
Yeah, and you mentioned where you live now, how it sounds like you really like the whole community piece of it, right? How you've got the home base, people in the neighborhood, that kind of a thing. Do you feel when it's actually there physically, close by, that kind of gives you more happiness and fulfillment than just doing something digitally? Because you have your YouTube channel, right? So you're reaching many thousands of people that way as well. But do you find that when it's something at home, close to you, within physical proximity, do you find that kind of puts a little extra satisfaction onto the whole thing just because it is so real and physical and you can touch it? Do you find that makes a difference or not really?
Oh, it really makes a difference,
Okay.
especially after being nomads, because when you're traveling, you're moving through communities and you're never really connected to the local community. And you can meet other travelers and expats, but it can be a series of very superficial conversations about how long are you here? Where were you before? Where are you going next? So being in a community has been a really wonderful change for us because we get to see the same neighbors time after time. We're building some roots which is really wonderful. So it just creates a nice feeling, something that we didn't even realize that we missed for all those years.
It is interesting, right? Like the whole kind of human nature piece, right? About wanting to be community, still part of a group, knowing people in the neighborhood, that kind of a thing. It's amazing how that may sound trivial to some, but it is nice, right? To have that.
Yes.
Instead of always being guests and but never actually seen as true locals, you know what I mean? So that is very interesting. And that sounds like something you probably would be hard to know until you've tried it and have experienced it, right?
Yes, absolutely. You don't really know what it's like to live in a foreign country outside of your own culture until you actually do it. And then you realize that it's fascinating, but you can also feel a little isolated as well, a little distance. So it's been a really great contrast for us to have a place that we can call home and know that we're going to be here for many years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it seems like the one of the underlying themes of this conversation is trade-offs, how there's always the trade-offs, right? And it's not like there's some one perfect thing with only positives, no negatives, right? There's always something. So it's about figuring what those are and then through experimentation, like you said, and then crafting your life, the life you want based on that. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being so open and for sharing all this. I found it absolutely fascinating. Can you tell us a bit more about your work, where we can find your videos, your blog, and anything else that you're working on that you'd like to promote? And I'll be sure to link out to it in the show notes as well.
Sure, yeah. As you mentioned, we have our YouTube channel, so you can find it. It's our Freedom Years on YouTube. And we also have a monthly newsletter that goes out from our Freedom Years on Substack. And in terms of some of our latest work, we just spent 3 months of winter in the Canary Islands, which is an absolutely beautiful place to be. And we created a few videos coming out of that. So if anyone would like to see what January and February and March look like, and a very beautiful destination, and the hiking and the food and just what the lifestyle is like, I would highly recommend those videos.
So, yeah, it's a wonderful channel. You mentioned that you guys actually do the editing yourselves. So it's really nice to see your creative outlet shine like this. And it's really nice to watch and see and get ideas for trips that we can take as well. Thank you so much for doing that and for sharing everything. And thanks for coming on the show. This was really wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share it with someone that you think may find it useful. And of course, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify is always super appreciated as well.
Thanks for listening to the Build Wealth Canada podcast at www.buildwealthcanada.ca.